And LLMs certainly do that. They allow you to go through and and you're right, to an extent, tuning prompts and getting to a place where you are better at prompting what you want back from it. I agree with, but again, there are times when it's like, hey, with regards to product X, a specific feature, this type, please, show me how to enable and configure this on this platform, blah, 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 using command line interface. And it comes back and gives you product Y's product sheet as a data reference point and pointing to how they do it. But that's not product X. And I clearly defined, right? So that's just one example that recently really kind of rustled my jimmies, if you will.
Yeah. I've gotten tripped up by a few of those because, Google was so quick to replace their search results with AI summary, and same with every other one that's out there. And so, it's 99% of the time, pretty darn good summary of what was there. But that 1% of the time, boy, that can sure bite you, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh yeah. Well,
I mean, you
it's
understand what it's
also,
doing. Good.
yeah, it's also very prone to the age-old problem of GIGO, right?
Yeah.
Garbage in, garbage out, and it's crawling the web. And we
Yeah.
all know the web is just a bastion of truthful information. There's nothing out there that's incorrect, right? But if it can't find the answer from a reliable source, it'll deepen its search. And that's where you start to get into issues with bad information coming back.
But it's still, if you use it correctly, it's still not so much better. I mean, in the tech world, yeah. I mean, I predate when you could Google things, so I used to have to solve things without the ability to do Google or any search. Even the early version of the web, even when you're using like links in the text browser and trying to search on a search engine, you there was nothing useful to find there. I mean, news groups, maybe you had some stuff, but usually you were figuring it out on yourself, calling your buddy, or maybe calling the company that made it. We didn't used to have this unlimited amount of information, but I mean today, I mean, I've had answers that I found like hundreds of pages deep into Google results before. And
Oh yeah.
what you're really trying to do is find that needle in the haystack, is pattern recognition. And it's not that you can't do it better, it's just that it can do good enough in seconds what would take you days, basically. And
Or
I mean,
weeks.
that's sort of like what I think, like it's like one of the biggest places that I can kind of describe what AI does, because it's basically pattern recognition effectively applied with some language instructions effectively. And the thing is that to Photoshop, anyone that's ever like done image editing and tried to like blend two things together or cut things apart, you, you realize that you can do an undetectable job if you zoom way in and do it one pixel at a time, but no one has the time for that. And so most people, they zoom quite a ways out, and they tolerate some slop, or they use some sort of like smoothing or smudging tool or something to blend it to sort of cheat on the way. But an AI tool can do that one pixel at a time, and it can do it instantly. And the pattern is generally, I mean, you're still going to find scenarios where there's a weird image that the pattern didn't work with, but it's pretty rare. So it's sort of like again, you just got to get like, give me what you got, look at the result and be like, ooh, this thing didn't turn out how I have to, and then update the instructions sort of. And if you look at it as a tool and stop thinking that it's actually intelligent, it works great. And the only, it's like really the worst downside is that it's training on what's on the web, which means as it produces data that gets published to the web, it's feeding from its own results. So it's sort of evolving what it trains from over time to some degree, which I don't know, you guys probably heard the joke about how like AI art was like so bad after, I can't remember how much time it was, that like all AI art was starting to look the same because it was training from the results of other AI all, and it was sort of like a fractal where it was approaching a scenario where it no longer had the look that everyone liked it to have anymore because it was tainted by what it was training on.
Why do they never get the
And
hands right? They always got like extra fingers and stuff. Yeah.
Well,
right.
they've done some updates, and they it's doing a lot better. But yeah, that was one of the early tells on AI was just look at the
Or even
hand.
text.
Almost.
They messed up the text a lot in a lot of the pictures I
Yeah,
get.
double spaces, way too many commas, double dashes. Some of them, like Chat GPT, with the ridiculous overuse of emojis and things of that nature. Sure, you can fairly easily spot AI
Yeah.
written content.
Yeah. But
Oh yeah.
even the Google, the AI results that it gives you now, they're not very dependable. And I think everybody's probably used that. And something as simple as I was helping my neighbor change the oil in his truck. And I said, how many quarts of oil does your truck take? And he said, oh, let me Google it real quick. And he told me what it was. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right to me. Let's get your manual out and look at it. And if we would have went by Google, it would have been like 2 quarts low. And I'm like, I do not trust the results that it gives. And you would think that would be like simple enough to look at. They would have manuals for, a 5-year-old pickup truck online, I would think. But
it's not like being 2 quarts low is really problematic.
No, why not? Vehicles are cheap these days. You can just buy a new one.
Yeah, and just get a new one.
Yeah.
And the motor blows. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't even. I mean, changing the oil is too expensive. Just get a new vehicle.
Yeah. The oil capacity thing is actually an interesting thing because, all the way back that I can remember, that's always been one of those things where you never got. I shouldn't say you never. In a lot of vehicles that I've owned over the years, you've gotten fuzzy results or no results on certain things. You ultimately had to throw the dipstick in there and see what it came out with and be like, oh, okay.
Right.
And, run it a little bit and then check it again.
I'm surprised.
I'm pretty sure that's just.
I'm surprised they don't have that on the under hood information sticker.
Yeah.
You would think they would, but I've never seen that ever. I mean, maybe somebody writes it on there with like a paint pen or something, but I've never seen a sticker with the information.
Yeah, I haven't seen that yet either. I have seen manuals though that have the information in there and they give you a range because again, I think this is the root of that particular problem is that everyone's trying to cost cut. So like, if Toyota makes, like 10 different like V6s, I don't know what the real numbers are. I'm making up numbers for example, but and like most of them fall within a 2 quart range. They're probably going to say just this to this range, and instead of printing 2 manuals or I'm sure they also have, but I'm just saying like what's generally available out there. You're more likely to find the high volume version of anything, and so that's more likely to be the economy mass printed thing that has the generic information on it. And we've probably all well we're probably all been around long enough that if we did work on cars, you went to get some really basic part, looked up the exact thing and answered 50 questions on, is it this one or is it that one? Is it this one? Is it the 4 liter or is it the 5 liter? Is it the, and is it manual transmission or is it the automatic? And then you end up getting to the result, they give you a part and it doesn't even come close to fitting.
All right.
Like
when I ask them for a 1/4-inch fuel filter, and they're like, "What vehicle is it for?" I'm like, "What does it matter what it's for? It's a 1/4-inch fuel filter. Is it for an automatic or a manual?"
Yeah.
Because it's a fuel filter. What year is that? Can you just go? There's the box. I want that.
AI could probably help with that because that's probably a UI thing. Because what's probably going on is there isn't a feature they built into there to be able to search by the size. They don't probably have that spec or whatever.
Right.
The data might even be in the database, but they designed it in such a way where they probably found these less problems happen if they filter you down this series of questions, and that's how it kind of arrives to where it is. Because again, most of these people is like someone that works at Napa or whatever, which may or may not have graduated high school yet, and may or may not know much about auto, and so you can see where like an AI model, which could literally like look in the back end, could theoretically find that data a lot more efficiently without, with just a generic search or something like that. with a degree of inaccuracy.
It does make sense. I actually hadn't thought about that, but if I were designing something like that for an auto parts store, the way that I would do it, make, model, year, it would just be part of the thing. And then once you get those three things filtered, you've limited your part search to just what would be for that vehicle, right? And then you go to fuel filter. It makes sense. Yeah. It does.
I miss the old days when you got the one old guy behind the counter that's been there for 30 years. And he busts out this book that's like this thick, and he's got like 10 of them. And he's like, "Oh, I'll find that part." And then like 30 minutes later, and there's 100 people lined up behind you at the counter, and then he's like, "I got it right here."
The good old days.
Yeah, back when things that we made in America were over-engineered, lasted longer than they should have.
Back when you could actually buy parts that were made in the USA. Yeah, you can't even buy brake pads or rotors that are made in the USA anymore. I don't think they exist.
Right. Yeah. Well, I wonder. That'd be interesting.
I've looked. I could not find them. Not for the application I was looking for.
Now we got to find an auto parts executive or something. Get them on.
I'd be willing to bet it exists somewhere, but I bet you if you realize that it cost you like $100 per pad or something like that, you're like, well, I didn't want it that badly.
Well, that's the problem. Nobody wants to pay it.
If it doesn't squeal, sign me up.
They're like, I can get the same Chinese made pads for $24.95, and or the OEM replacement pads for $99. I mean, the chances are 99% of the people are going to go for the $25 one.
Yeah.
25. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's statistically a thing that happens. I mean, I see it happen all the time. It actually pisses me off because I'm like, this is clearly the better product. Everyone spend the extra money on it, and nobody does. It doesn't even matter if it barely saves you anything. In fact, I mean, this is one of my big pet peeves in business. I'm not rich enough to be one of the business owners yet, but our entire market seems to be focused around like short-term gains over their competition. Like nobody seems to care about the long term, but also our population is entirely based upon, what will make me more money today, even if I spend 10 times as much in 10 years. They don't care. They took less money out of their pocket today. And so like the whole, like, I don't know, I grew up in a total cost of ownership evaluation and having to fight the CapEx versus OpEx battles and all this other crap. And today I find myself in a stupider world where I've been told to buy ridiculously expensive things that didn't do anything we wanted because of reasons, I see this all the time. And why do you think Walmart's doing so good? Why do you think, it's everybody, well, I didn't say everybody. Most people are aware of the trade they're making. It's just they still want to save those few bucks now, even if it costs them a lot more in the future.
Yeah.
It's
the Temu thing, right? It's why Temu
exactly
became so popular. And what people seem to neglect to, pay attention to is, look, that Temu product is probably going to last you maybe a year, and you'll buy another one and another one and another one. Whereas the one that you bought that was 400 times, the cost, not 400 times, but 4x the cost, right? So instead of 25, it's 100. 10 years later, it's still working.
Yep.
And at that point, you've bought 2.5 of the one that's still working by buying junk stuff over and over and over again. Now, it's not always true, right? I mean, there are some things that are just, cheaper is fine,
Yeah.
But, when it comes to they're not much. I think the cheaper is better at the end of the day.
I mean, the other problem you have with these channels like Amazon and Temu is that they pollute the supply chain with counterfeit items and bogus items. For something as benign as spark plugs on a car, which they're at most $15 a piece for like really good iridium plugs for a modern engine. And you probably, if a V6 needs 6 of them. So, I mean, it's a little bit chunk of change, but people think they could buy it on Amazon I can get them for $9 on there, but a lot of the time they're fake and they won't last as long. And then, you're doing it again and doing these procedures on these new cars. I mean, they're not as simple. You don't have as much room to work in there, and you're fighting against each other. And then I've seen that they're polluting the supply chain down, and at retailers you wouldn't think that they just I don't know how they get in there, but somehow they are. Now you got to be careful where you even get things from.
Yeah, I think there's a number of factors there. But one of them is that cheap knockoff works good enough to solve the problem enough of the time that people are willing to risk it. I mean, I know people that work in various fields, and especially in automotive, they'll often be like, well, I'll take the thing that I can get tomorrow for a few bucks, and if it doesn't work out, they'll either eat it or try to return it or something like that. But at the same time, the product that they really wanted, they know they could trust it. They may have ordered it at the same time, but it might not be there for a month or something like that. It's sort of, so I mean, not to jump into the economy, but it's just it's sort of like the whole trade war scenario to me is it is an open market has a lot of benefits. I do think that there's scenarios where you want to guard against having anyone that can blackmail certain resources. I've always felt very strongly about food being something that, for example, each country, to the extent that they can produce their own. Energy is probably another one. You know what I'm saying? Those are things where you don't want someone to be able to choke cold you out just because they want to. But generally speaking, though, there is a synergy that happens when you have a thing where you buy a part from a person that does better at it there or cheaper or whatever, has a resource that you don't have. I mean, we've got in the US, some of the largest amount of resources available to us, but we're not tapping into all of them, and you wouldn't necessarily want us to exhaust them all right away either. Not that you could do that overnight, but I mean, it's it isn't necessarily better to do that. We've sort of aligned ourselves to be a services economy, which, I mean, there's pluses and minuses with that, but there's a lot of financial benefit with that. And honestly, what's better than selling your time for a lot of money? It's sort of, yeah, I do think though that we have this problem, and I think we all probably lived through this era, because light bulbs is probably the thing that I'll say that pisses me off the most, by the way, because we all remember how long they used to last. Then they started lasting less long. Then they sold the LED. Well, they had several other iterations, but eventually we ended up in LED light bulbs, which are supposed to last basically forever, except that they don't anymore. And we all probably remember early on, decades ago, the whole conversation about engineered obsolescence, because there were companies that basically did so well that they sold themselves out of selling any more of their product, basically. And that sort of led to a bunch of people that took it to the other extreme of, hey, let's be as greedy as possible and let's try to make things have to fail so often they have to buy them all the time, which also I think kind of feels like the whole carnivore thing and the health scenario. I kind of feel that applies there too. How do you sell drugs? How do you sell if you actually remove the need for them, there's sort of a problem there. So how much money do you want to invest when the company that's funding the solution for not needing any more things that the company has? And I'm being a little bit dramatic, but it's just is the same company that also sells the products, what is their incentive to actually, if you have that breakthrough and they're like, whoa, this is going to end our company if we release this, do you really think they're going to do that? Or I mean, companies I've worked for, I'm pretty sure the answer is no, and so it's the same thing with light bulbs. I'm pretty sure if we had a 100-year light bulb, what would that do to the light bulb industry? I mean, I don't personally think that should be a problem, but it's just we're sort of running into these philosophical scenarios where capitalism, meets innovation, meets, several other planes at the same time, because it annoys me so much how often I have to change all my damn light bulbs, and it seems to be only happening more as we add better technology to it, and the cost is going up. So you're getting a worse product and paying more for it, and you're going to like it because they've effectively removed any alternative. And I'm seeing that in tons of other products, but light bulbs is one of the ones that piss me off the most.
Well, if you
I mean, light bulbs, there's actually a consortium. They started a consortium. There's a good video on YouTube. If you look up light bulb planned obsolescence, I think will get you there. and they talk about it, and they literally started a consortium, which like that's not legal, right?
Yeah.
You can't like go and like, I can't remember what the term for it is, but go to all of the competitors in the industry and like do handshake to like, lower the, that's not legal, right? But they
Yeah.
did it. It's known. They still, it's an ongoing thing. And so, yeah, it is. It's a serious piss me off. And an LED, I mean, come on, man. Yeah, I've got, I remember booting up a 20-year-old Apple IIc.
Yeah.
The little LED still works. LEDs are like one of the most simplistic electronic devices in the world. They don't go out. I mean,
Yep.
you can break the wire, you know what I mean? You can terminate the lead, but other than that, they don't really tend to just die. So now you're selling light bulbs that you have to plan in a way to make these basically, very long lasting types of light emitting diodes die,
Yep.
just so you can get more money. And it's like, dude, but on the flip side, would anybody go spend $200 on a light bulb? If you knew it was the last light bulb you'd ever buy for that particular fixture, would you spend the $200 or would you buy the one next to it for $5, $7?
I probably would, but I think most people would not. So I'm always thinking about what the long-term thing is, and again, that would depend on my faith in it actually lasting as long as it did. So, but I mean, even if it paid for itself, I'd probably try the experiment at least with one bulb or something and see how it worked for a while, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah,
I
I
do.
mean,
Yeah.
I do think most people are like, oh no, less money up front. I'm going to take that offer every day, and that's what they do.
I'm a huge
I think they're
proponent of the buy once, cry once philosophy.
yeah,
But
exactly.
and I mean that's why I own a bunch of old crap from decades ago that still works. But I mean I paid for it.
Maybe.
I like
love
stuff
it.
that's
Like,
serviceable as well.
Like we were talking about, like washing machines is a big one, right? The old stuff, right? Without all the electronics and everything else that goes into it. Nowadays, your washing machine breaks. It's almost 100% of the time. It's a circuit board on the back of the in the
Yep.
unit, and that's where all the soft touch and the whiz bang features and sounds and all that stuff comes from. It's not the actual mechanical working portion of the washing machine.
Yeah,
So,
speaking of we had to replace our washer last year, and we were looking at them, and I mean, they all have that stuff. They like almost every single one of them, like Wi-Fi. Like, why do I need to notify my phone when the load is done? I don't.
Yeah.
So with all this stuff, they got screens and whistles and notifications. It costs more. So we went with the Speed Queen, which is like the most simplistic. It's like buying a washer from like the late 70s or early 80s. There's nothing to it. It's serviceable and there's nothing, but it costs more than the one with all the crap on it, which makes absolutely no sense to me. But I guess like if you're curing a disease or any other problem, like you lose a customer. Yeah. So I guess a lot of these companies see it that way.
Well, back on that, you were talking about the whole pharmaceutical thing and that whole industry, right? Here's an easy litmus test, right? The idea behind these agencies, and they tell us how much they're spending on it and how hard they're working on it. But just off the top of your head, I mean, they've been around for a very long time, right? And I don't know about you, but I hear all the time we're spending, $2 billion on this research to cure the. Name 3 things that they've cured, not treated, not prophylactic, just actual cure. Name 3. Okay, let's just make it 1. Name 1.
I think I got one.
Right? Exactly. There's no money in a treatment or in a cure. Yeah. There's only money in treatment or a prophylactic type of a treatment, right? Something you take to not have something occur. If you create a cure, your business is dead.
Yes.
It's gone. Yes. There's no more of that problem that you make so much money on. And I think there's definitely I don't have any answer for it, right? But I definitely think that some of that stuff needs to change, right? There needs to be a real, actual,
Yeah.
not a vision statement, but like an actual mission to actually cure. And if you're not curing anything, then GTFO, man.
It ultimately has to come to, I think, unfortunately, some kind of like government, because what you ultimately have to do is make the wrong choice the more painful choice and the right choice. And I'm not saying use the stick instead of the carrot. I'm literally saying
Use both at the
use
same
both,
time,
or maybe just use
frequently.
the carrot, whatever you can get away with. But I mean,
Eat them and
uh,
shove carrots down their throat.
yeah, seriously. But I mean, it is
Where
to
I'm
that
at,
perspective.
hey?
the, the food industry is crazy, and if you think about it from a very business perspective, you understand the problem right away. If you look
Oh yeah.
at any processed food, the profit margins are like at a minimum of 10x profit from the cost to make it versus the cost to produce it. Take any whole food, but take meat, which I'm pretty big on as I'm doing the carnivore diet, as we mentioned before. It's like the meat specifically, there is fractions of percents to be made because it has to go through three different layers. There's really not much in the terms of subsidies anymore. I mean, honestly, you can probably almost do better by raising your own cows or whatever food you want at this point in time, just because
Okay.
if you got to go through, by the time you got to get that, you got to feed the thing, you got to butcher the thing, you got to package the thing, you got to ship the thing, you got to freeze it, whatever it is that you got to do. By the time you've gone through all those stages, the amount of room to make money on is like so narrow. It is like zero. And that's a similar story exists for everything that's not a processed food. And especially when you talk about like seed
Well,
oils, or you talk about like
and
any
there's
kind
the
of,
other piece, right? Is that none of the whole foods, right? None of the foods that are good for you
yeah,
are shelf stable, like the stuff that's not good for you.
exactly.
And right off the bat, that should be like number one indication. If this stuff can sit on a shelf for 25 years, it's not good for you. Okay. Food should die. It should decompose. It should go back into its natural state and become dirt that more food is made from. Right. Now,
Yeah.
my personal opinion, but yeah, no, I agree. And some of that's around regulations and things of that nature. Some of it's also around the way that we do these things with very large ag shops, right? Back in the
Yeah.
day, it would be a farmer, and the farmer would, or a rancher or whatever, depending where you are, and they would have, their meat, and maybe they had a packer, et cetera. But they still exist. You just have to find them, which are actual farmers that you go and
Yes.
they have their meat from their cows on their farm that they sell through their farm stand. And at that point you're cutting out a lot of that stuff, right? You're
Yeah.
helping.
There are websites where you can find places to buy a half of a quarter or a quarter of a cow. The problem is a lot of people don't want to buy in those kinds of volumes. I do, but a lot of
Yeah.
people don't want to do that. But like I said, I actually think if you have land, you know, raising your own cows probably the cheaper way of going. And the thing about it is,
Oh, yeah.
as anyone knows, like one cow can pretty much roughly feed one person for a year. So, uh, pretty well, and you could stretch that to be a lot more if you wanted to. Basically, uh,
Yeah.
that kind of investment is like, I don't care what kind of like bad thing happens, that cow's still going to feed the same number of people for the same duration of time, and it's a solid thing to have. But yeah. Anyways, the whole food thing though, it really does come down to like just like where's the money at, and I don't know if you know this, but that all started. Uh, well, there's probably other things, but the main thing that put us where we are today, the Western diet, was established because of effective problems with during World War II. There was a big food shortage, and so they had to figure a way to feed our populations. And when they did that, they came up with the best thing that they could. It was not meat at the time. They couldn't ramp it up fast enough.
The
Yeah.
food
The
triangle with
food
the
pyramid was
biggest,
propaganda.
or pyramid, the biggest layer of it was grains.
Yep.
And it's like, That, if anything, that should just be upside down. But even then, I mean, the thing was, yeah, my personal opinion of government, you know this, we talked a little bit at the summit, but my personal opinion of anything
You love
government
it.
related is, yeah, it's a travesty. It's just, I think Milton Friedman said it best, right? If you gave the federal government control over the Saharan desert, there'd be a shortage of sand in 5 years.
Yes.
And so, but yeah, and